welcome to QInsight from QGate, where we explore where CRM, AI, emerging technology, and the real world meet. I'm Steve Clarke.
And I'm Alastair Jupp in episode 3 of our third season. We're joined by Ryan Pennett. Ryan is the VP of Business Development at our sister company QWare, the business behind Paribus 365 and IntelliCTI, two products designed to enhance Microsoft Dynamics 365 environments. With more than 25 years experience in business development and CRM-focused technology, Ryan works closely with organizations looking to improve data quality, governance, and operational efficiencies. His recent work has focused heavily on AI readiness, particularly the role clean, structured, trusted data plays in successful AI adoption.
Ryan, welcome to the show. It's excellent to have you on.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Alastair. Appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity today.
Absolutely our pleasure. Now, Ryan, of course, it feels like right now everyone wants to talk about AI, and it's been like that for a little while. And in our conversation before the show, you suggested that AI readiness should start really before AI, but what we're seeing is actually many organizations rushing to the destination without checking whether the foundations are ready. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, you see stuff in the news and LinkedIn, you read stuff, you get a great demo, you're looking online, you're seeing all the wonderful things that AI can do for us and the promises that the big AI companies are making, right? And of course, naturally, human nature, we're like, yeah, I love that. It sounds great. When can we get on board with that? Unfortunately, what they don't realize is, in order to get to that end game, you really need to have a strong foundation, right? Like a house. You can't paint a house if you haven't built the frame. You can't build the frame if you haven't laid the foundation, the plumbing, right? So it's the same thing. You can't launch a full AI program and turn everything over to your AI agents if the foundation of the data underneath is not ready.
I think you're spot on there. They don't realize that the importance of the data underlying. It's AI is so exciting. The marketing that's going out about it is to be honest, quite unreal in some cases, and it's not half as simple as what the marketing is telling the world. Equally, data is less glamorous. It's painful. It's difficult. It's challenging. And it's just not so exciting. Data is consistently underestimated by a lot of people that have never dealt with data, I think.
So if we could look at it in perhaps two parts, the whole AI piece, one is the data, the foundation, and the doing, or getting it ready for the doing, and the second part is the doing. So when we see all this marketing, it's alluding to the fact that actually the AI itself is the easy part, not necessarily getting everything ready.
Yeah, well, that's obviously what they want you to believe, right? It's like, yeah, you just purchase on the dotted line, pay your $20 a month, or it's for obviously end user, but it's obviously more for that from an agentic side. But yeah, you pay your SaaS fees, and flip the switch, and you're ready to go, and it's going to go and read all your data, and and magic's going to happen. But we know that's not actually the case, right? Because what people don't understand is, do you have dirty data? Right? What does dirty data mean, right? Do you have a lot of duplicates? Do you have multiple systems with, a John Smith in the ERP system and the sales system and the marketing system? They're all different, right? They have different histories behind them, that type of thing. So you really need to have that single source of the truth, right? You've got to have data that's accurate, clean, contextual, it's not missing data, because AI, what does it do? It basically reads, right, what your data is, and then says, okay, you want me to go do this thing, I'm going to go do this thing, but unfortunately the data's dirty, so you're going to get hallucinations and much worse, right? That's the problem.
The key thing is the building of AI is relatively simple, right? Because most of the building has been done. It's all about the training, right? And the training gets done on the data that it's provided. And if that data is not right, or it doesn't have access to the right data, it's a real challenge to get your AI to do what you want it to do, and your hallucinations become
absolutely. So looking at AI readiness as a thing. Is that a business problem, or is it a technology problem, or is it both? Where does it sit?
It can be both. It's more of a business problem, right, and a cultural problem. So the bottom line is, in order to be AI ready, right, we're really talking about you're talking about the whole kit and caboodle, if you will, right? You have to train your users. You have to pick the right solutions that are going to work for you on the AI side. But again, going back to the data, what Ali just said, right, talking about what you're feeding this thing, it's going to go read something, right? What does that look like? And again, it's boring stuff, but data quality comes from, it's the foundation, right? So if the data is not ready to go, it's going to fail. So to me, it is more of a business problem, because the problem too is that you need to have what I like to call building a culture of data quality, right? And that's got to come from the top down, right? Because the end users may or may not care about it, even though they're in the trenches, right? But again, it's got to come from the top, where we agree that we're going to really have data governance and clean up the data, and we're going to maintain that going forward, right? So that's critical if you're going to launch into an AI program.
And for me, 100% is not IT who own this, right? No way on this world is it IT, because IT don't understand the details of how a business operates, the day-to-day operations, what people are doing, how much the regulations required. It's just, there's no way that IT own this at all.
Except when you haven't got mandatory fields on CRMs, for example, because and right, I'm a salesperson.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, Ryan. Look, you and I, we're both salespeople, and for me at least, when it comes to anything data related, recording information, I will take the path of least resistance. Now, that's not best practice, of course not. And when we start thinking about using AI when it comes to analytics, forecasting, all this good stuff, unless you're getting full, accurate information across all records, because if you only have them in dribs and drabs here and there, you're not going to get the full picture. And out of this great IA agent you've spent all this money being built, ultimately you're going to get false positives, false negatives all over the place. So I'll put a little bit on IT, just put that little red mandatory field dot.
Yeah, but it's not IT who choose to make it mandatory. It's your boss who chooses to make it mandatory because you're not doing it, and they tell IT to do it.
Fair. All right, I'll take that back. Good stuff. Okay, so
are you telling me you don't
Ryan,
data into the system, so you'll just skip over and not complete everything, right? So because we all love adding data into the systems, right? So who needs mandatory fields for that?
We do CRM, of course, and I'll get producer Phil to chop that bit out so no one can accuse me of doing anything other than best practice. So Ryan, in our, again, just referring to the chat we had before coming on air today, there was the phrase, you can't automate chaos. So when we come to kind of data and governance issues that businesses are encountering when they start prepping for AI, what kind of stuff gets thrown up? I mean, you mentioned earlier on about hallucinations. Are there any other kind of major pitfalls we're getting off the bat?
Well, just imagine if you think that, imagine your data, right? And you've got duplicates. Maybe you got dozens, even hundreds of the same contact or account in there. You've got duplicate opportunities. You're missing data fields. You don't have your target market industries, number of users, all these types of data points that AI is going to rely on, right, to basically go do whatever it may be, whether it may be summarizing who's going to be the hottest opportunities to go after, right, the list of activities you should follow up on, those types of things. It's going to require data, right? So if you are feeding a bunch of missing information, duplicate data, right, outdated, stale accounts, what we like to call ghost accounts, right? Just basically it's a name and maybe some address, but not really, right? So you don't have full information on an account, and then AI, and you tell AI, hey, let's go read this and tell me what my top 20 accounts should be and why, and let's go hand them to my top sales agents, right? And then what happens? The sales agent starts calling these people, and it's like the business is out of business, right? The person no longer works there. They find out that this opportunities from activities from 5 years ago, right? it's complete chaos. Now you've wasted your top salespeople's time chasing after basically, opportunities that were non-existent, if you will. So, and there's a whole host of other things, right? Again, it all comes back down to the foundation.
I think data governance, you kind of extend it to data management as well. That I'm not 100% whether they're the same thing. Maybe you can answer for me in a minute, actually, Ryan. But for me, data management and good data management is becoming an essential thing. It's one of the biggest areas of neglect we've seen as a business in the biz app space. Data is just not even considered as to who owns it, what's done with it. But now we're in the AI world, and AI is being trained on that data. Just to put this into context, do you want your AI training on itself on 10-year-old data? Well, your business changes a lot in 10 years, right? And your salespeople change, and your approach to market, your go-to-market, your channels, everything changes over that period of time. But it still has access to all that data, and it's still learning from all that data, and then hence communicating out that data. In fact, you probably don't even want it more than 2 years out of date. Even 2 years is a long time, especially in the current world. Yeah. But if you point AI at your CRM and it hosts years of unmanaged data, it is learning the wrong things. Because that CRM is going to be a big source of your AI. If you consider a scenario where an AI agent looks at your product catalog, for example, and no one's kept your product catalog up to date, you could have obsolete products that you just haven't cleared out because the salesperson knows we don't sell that range anymore. I just won't put it on a quote. And AI will because it doesn't know the difference. It hasn't got that human part. Just to put it's a bit like saying, yes, we can sell a Betamax video, right? But Betamax is not. But if you've left it in your catalog, the AI is going to sell it, right?
Yeah.
So, and even worse, if it's priceless, that's obsolete. That's an even worse case to be in.
I'll start buying stuff that's Betamax era pricing. If we can roll all of our shopping back to the price list of those times, I think we'd be in a much better place. I'm going to throw a question out here to both Ali and you, Ryan. In terms of customers that you've dealt with, and Ryan, I know that QWare does a lot of its business via partners and some direct, whereas Ali, we're here at QGate, we sell to end users. Ali, I'll start with you. As a percentage, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to, Ryan, give you a little bit longer to think about this, but as a percentage of our customers over the years, how many times have we encountered data sets that are of a decent state that you think, and I appreciate AI has only been around for a couple of years and we've been in business for, close to 30. So even pre-AI, these projects that we go into, these customer environments that we go into, how often is the data in a good state?
I have to be a little bit careful how I respond. In a good state for what we need, I don't think we've ever seen it.
Wow.
But just to be clear, that's for what we need. If it's on a spreadsheet, for example, and we're putting it into a CRM, there's going to be obvious there.
Yeah.
The worst cases we see typically if someone's already on Dynamics, for example, and we're taking it over, typically 9 times out of 10 they're over their storage, right? Which is a good sign that data is a challenge for them and data is not where it needs to be.
Right.
But I can't think of a time where we've had a seamless, haven't had to do anything to the client's data to get it to how we need it for them to deliver what they want to deliver.
Okay, so that's interesting in the sense, I mean, we as an organization, we work with companies that have CRM platforms with 2 users. We've got customers, with kind of 2,000 users. Does that maybe suggest that data governance is often an afterthought to SMEs and maybe the kind of mid-market space? If you kind of looked at a Vodafone or a Coca-Cola, you'd probably suggest that they have whole swathes of departments and personnel looking after that type of that type of activity. But I think from what I'm reading between the lines slightly is that maybe data governance should absolutely, especially in the guise of using it for AI, it needs to be front and center, right?
Put it into context. If you got a new job, you're taking over from someone else, you're going to want...
I hope I don't need one, Ali, but carry on.
You want your data to be different, right? You want your job is you're going to do differently to what the predecessor's done. So it's an inevitable for us when we either take something over or take ownership of something, or we're going to want to do it differently because that's how we see best practice to be. So it's not necessarily a really negative thing on their governance. It's just part of the process of taking your business forward, I think.
Ryan, I'm going to ask the same question of you. Now, I don't know how relevant's not the right term, but how applicable it is, that question, to you, because Paribus is designed, for want of a better phrase, to fix data. Yeah. And we're not going to go down a sales route about Paribus. Great tool, we know it is. So would I be right in assuming that actually a lot of the organizations, end user organizations that you deal with, have a data problem, and that's why you're getting Paribus in the first place? Or alternatively, actually, is it maybe a check and balance? They've got a data governance policy and they're thinking, actually, we can double up on this. What's your experience?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is most people just what they think they've done enough, they usually have not done enough, right? Like you mentioned earlier about the Coca-Cola analogy, and you would imagine these guys would have massive IT departments and massive budgets, and therefore their data is probably in pretty good shape. But again, it compounds because you have the number of users, integrated systems adding into the mix, right? You need more process, you need more guardrails. You can't watch everybody. You have user training issues where you got 2,000 to 4,000 users. People just aren't going to follow the rules, right? It takes a small percentage, basically, of users, if you will, and they say, according to the statistics, 50 to 60% of dirty data comes from the end user, right? So the bottom line is you're just not going to be able to get everybody on board, train, proper governance techniques, and then as Ali was talking about, unfortunately, it's just not a sexy topic, and that starts from the top down. So the executives are not thinking, hey, well, how's our data governance program working out today, right? Because that's the most important thing. No, they're thinking, hey, how's our new AI sales agents, rolling out, and what's our funnel look like, right? The last thing they're thinking about is the data. So I think, yes, in our world, we obviously see bad data because a lot of people come to us from that, but we have other parts of our business, right? Telephony, connectivity to CRM, for example, where oftentimes, they don't even know us as data people, right? And you look at that, and they do a lookup, when a call comes in, and it's like, well, how many John Smiths are there? You've got a data problem, right? So we see it, all the time. I can only think of really one time someone came to us and says, I think we've got really bad data, and it actually wasn't the case. But that's one time. So yeah, everybody needs something to some degree. It's just how bad is it? And you'd be surprised at some. We've seen, I won't mention names, but some very large companies that you think, well, surely they've got a large IT department and they're on top of it. And it's a nightmare behind the scenes. So, yeah.
Just to add that, you can tell the companies who've got good data. And I don't know this for sure, but I pretty much guarantee Amazon nail their data, and it is absolutely critical for them, right? And you feel it on their end experience because someone who understands the data, they got a vast data, but I guarantee there's someone sat on their board that owns that, and they are talking about their data because that's why they're doing so well, right?
It's almost like they have their own web service.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. So, Ali, you and I at least have spoken about a framework of foundation, augmentation, and orchestration. Can you, as a starting point, walk us through those stages and explain why businesses are so desperate to jump right to the end of that, to the orchestration piece?
Okay, so foundation is getting your house in order, right? That's what we start with clients, is putting a CRM in, getting your finance system in, getting your ERP straight, getting your data right, all these things that are foundation doing the house. And this can be as simple as labeling field descriptions in a CRM so that an AI knows what that field is and what it does, up to large data cleansing, right? So it's quite a wide spectrum, that foundation piece. The next piece is the augmentation. This is the practical assistant, helping people reduce admin, improve decisions, working more effectively day to day, with training, governance, and policy. Again, AI has data has a big stake in that, and augmentation is reliant on the previous step. You can't put good governance in if you haven't got good data and good platforms to put that governance on top of. And then you've got orchestration. This is the fun stuff, when a business can truly accelerate and connecting AI into wider workflows, and so tasks, systems, and decisions can move much quicker and intelligently across the business. I use Ryan's house analogy, right? That it's like if you're doing the orchestration, you're trying to do the final fix in the interior design before you've done your foundations in the ground and you've built your house. That's kind of the way to look at it. You can do that, right? But what's going to happen? You've got nothing to paint. Your furniture is going to get all wet, and that's kind of the best way to look at it. So you have to go through this stage by stage. And we have clients that are asking for this, and we push back and saying, you need to do this first. No, we've done that. And actually, when you get into it, they haven't done that. And that's when there's a problem and friction.
Ryan, when we're talking about those three stages, so foundation, augmentation, orchestration, we've been speaking up until this point in the show about the foundation, so the readiness piece. But in your experience, is it a one and done? Is it a case of getting everything done and then, okay, we can forget about it and away we go? Or, and I think I know the answer to this, so it's, you know where I'm going, but this needs to be done ongoing, right? We're not just going to do this once on your data, run some scans and get it sorted. We've got to do this regularly, right?
Yeah. And so you're going to implement AI, you get to that orchestration layer and you're thinking, great, I've handed everything over to a handful of agents and they're going to basically, automate, the sales process right from the lead come in for the website. And we're going to answer questions and the agent's going to pull the pricing and then it's going to send out the next steps and do all the follow up and send a sales order to ERP, all that stuff, right? Great. Yeah, except for one problem is, as we were talking about earlier with Ali was saying about the price list. Is the price list old? Does the price list have stuff that's no longer on there? So again, and then things change, right? We change our price lists and our product offerings constantly. Again, I talked about earlier about ghost accounts and data companies going out of business, but you're still, marketing to them as hot opportunities type of stuff, right? Or cross-selling opportunities. You can't do any of that stuff, and data is always changing. Companies are always changing. People are always moving, right? So you have to have a complete data quality, data governance program, which from top to bottom not only cleans it but absolutely maintains it. Because what you're going to find out, we probably going to talk a little bit about some of the costs of AI, right? But one of those costs that you have to make sure that you've included is the continual maintenance of your data. Because if you take your eye off the ball for just for a moment, you're going to find downstream, and it becomes much more costly right downstream. Your AI agents are now starting to spit up bad data and hallucinate, and you're going to have all kinds of horrible effects down the road. So you have to absolutely continuously have a data governance program that's just constantly maintaining that data.
Absolutely. When we spoke a little bit earlier about AI readiness, and call it data governance at this point because it feels rather largely interchangeable, we almost all agreed, apart from the little red mandatory dots that IT put in, that this is a business problem, right? This is something that a business needs to look at as a whole. Let's try and be a little bit more helpful for our listeners. Where in a business does that sit? If it's not IT, where within the business?
Do you want to go first, Ryan, or should I?
I'll hear from the executive first, right? Because before I call you out, I'll give you the chance to speak first. Yeah.
Oh, you want me to go? Okay. For me, if you think about org charts, right? They tend to be vertical, and departments vertical, workflows horizontal. What a client experiences is your workflow. Yeah, you've got these departments along that workflow. They don't care whether they're dealing with sales or whether they're dealing with customer service or whoever. They're experiencing the workflow. For me, the best place to focus within this is looking at the gaps between those departments, the handovers that happen, and the transition of data along that workflow, and making sure. And it's as simple as someone might, if you haven't got ownership of those gaps as to who takes it from one to the other, you haven't got ownership of the data that then passes. And then you may say, well, we've got a template that does that, but no one owns that template. And so no one actually owns that transition from one department to the other. And in the main, most businesses fall over in those gaps in between those departments. For me, that's a great place to start and a great place to look at.
Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I mean, who's ultimately going to own that, right? We talked about it. It's not the poor IT guy. And plus, does he have the pull and wherewithal to go across departments, to talk to the different administrators of different systems, to say, hey, look, we've got to have these stopgaps. We've got to make sure that this process and this workflow that the customer sees is bulletproof end to end. No. He's going to need executive buy-in. He's going to need his immediate team and other teams involved. So again, it takes a village, right, as they say. So to me, you really need to have data governance, a data governance council. You need to have people who have particular roles within your data governance structure that basically going to own these different bits along the way, so that from the customer standpoint, that workflow is seamless. It works well. And again, it's not just the IT guys. Responsibility. It is everybody's responsibility for sure.
So I saw a recent concept. I say recent, it might have been last year, about federated data silos, because organizations for years have been almost not pushed down the route, but it's been suggested that the best route for data is consolidating it. So not to have these silos of data across different departments, different subsidiaries, or whatever that might look like. But now, and Microsoft, I think, have been quite vocal about this in a fabric context, is that individual federated silos that are looked after by departments is actually maybe a better way to go. So you have a series of data governance rules and regulations, but within each function, finance, sales, marketing, operations, they actually own their own data rather than a central function. Ali, what do you think that could possibly be the way to go?
I think a lot of these big companies absolutely know that whoever gets the ownership of all these silos, they have to be in, or they're so much easier when they're in one place. When you've got a virtual stack in one technology, everything's so much easier. Your governance is easier, data management is easier, your connections are easy, everything's easier. And I think there's a big battle at the moment. If you look at Salesforce, if you look at Microsoft, if you look at OpenAI, all the rest of them, they're all trying to take that vertical stack. Mm-hmm. And the one that manages it, they're the ones that are going to win out of this. It has to. Having different technologies is just going to make your life harder and harder, I think, going forwards.
Ryan, who do you normally deal with as an organization, QWare? When someone comes to you and says, right, we want Paribus, we've got a data problem. Typically, if you're not giving too much away at this point, if it is a question you shouldn't be answering, but what type of stakeholder do you see?
It can be different, right? Because it depends on who has the keys to the kingdom, right? Whether it be the CRM administrator, whether it be, the IT manager, but oftentimes it could be a marketing manager, right? Because they're more downstream and they're marketing this to this data, and they're like, and they know, right? Because they're paying for sending out email campaigns of what the cost of, managing. If I've just sent out a 10,000 person email marketing campaign and I got 2,000 bounces back, they know very well that they've got a data problem, right? So it really does run the gamut, right, in terms of that. So it really, unfortunately, it's never. Well, I cannot say it's never. Is it going to be the CTO? Not typically. It's going to be usually somebody who's a little bit further down the line who's probably more affected by this, or they're worried about their jobs. We had IT departments go, yeah, we rolled out some stuff of yours, and it showed 300 instances of John Smith. You need to remove it now. We need to go back and clean this up. It's like, we tried to tell you that, but okay, yeah. So it can come from anywhere. I think going back to your question though that Ali was talking about in terms of if you do have these different silos too, to keep in mind. If you are going to have, your ERP, and we do, right? We have your ERP systems, your sales systems, your marketing systems, and support systems, right? And you have a John Smith in each one of them. What you really want to have is a single version of the truth, right? Because at the end of the day, if you turn on these agents, right, they're expecting to have all of the history of John Smith in ERP to line up with that in sales and marketing and support, right? And what often we see is, nope, you integrate these systems, but you've got disparate data across it, right? So that history of that one guy is not there. You've got 14 of them, or, different histories, sales orders, what have you. And so again, go back to that question about chaos. So if you're going to have these different systems, you've got to have a single source of the truth. You have to have that master data management portion of the data governance.
You raise a very interesting point, actually, going back to the marketing example you made about, having duplicates of customers, and then you're using your marketing, funds and credits to start marketing to people that don't exist anymore, or that you've got 3 or 4 versions of in the CRM or the database, and then you're sending 3 or 4 emails. Let's talk about something that actually really compounds that. It's not about the cost of marketing sends, it's now AI tokens. This is it, isn't it? We're actually looking at AI agents, and Microsoft have a consumption-based AI model. This is going to get expensive if data isn't right, and you have all of these records, false records, duplicates, whatever they may be. This is going to get expensive, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's the other cost, right, that people don't realize. We've been paying for this stuff as a $20 a month if you're an end user, or a SaaS per user model, right, across your enterprise for one flat fee. And it's like, oh, great. It's just an extra $30 a month per user. And I got all these great AI tools. And then great. So I've been using them we talked about the augmentation layer, right, of that. It's like just helping out your sales users or your marketing people with certain tasks. And that's great. But now when you want to go to the orchestration layer, you want to turn it over to agents and start automating all this stuff, and agents are doing their own thing in the background. Your usage of AI and the tokens in the background explodes thousands of times. And I don't think people realize that. And I mean, there's a little reason why Microsoft upped your Dataverse tiers, back in December or whatever it was, right? Because they know it's coming, right? They want to get you hooked on it, right? And they're all like, they're all going to have to start, talk more about that later, but they're all going to have to start showing them the bottom line. All this CapEx that they've been spending on AI is going to start paying off, right? So you're going to see, once we got you hooked on this AI or automating stuff, the token cost is going to just go out of control, and it's going to be much more costly. And then again, it goes back to the data. If 20% of your data is garbage or more, what are your costs going to look like?
Yeah, the world is changing in terms of business and commercial models, isn't it? Right, and AI is driving that. And then when I read the other day an article, it was just a LinkedIn post. I don't know how true it was, but they talked about how they got rid of all of their developers and replaced it with some AI, Claude, I think it was. And then they'd realised that the costs were so prohibitive, they then brought someone back in to do all the commodity work. Wow, we've just gone full circle there. So, but there is a lesson there, if it is indeed true, right? Is you have to target to particular things. I think the high value return, that's where you would target your AIs to do. because otherwise it would just, as you say, it just comes cost prohibitive. And the other big thing is that's coming down the line. There's a big power problem, right? They're creating all these faster and faster NVIDIA chips to do this stuff, but they're consuming more and more power. We talked about this, I think, previously on a previous episode. But actually, you're going to eventually the power is not going to be there to do it, which means supply and demand. It's a very simple business. It's been around for years and years and hundreds of thousands of years. Is the demand is going to outstrip the supply, and then your costs are going to go up. Right? It's pure and simple, right?
Yeah. Well, like Ramageddon, we've seen, right? We're already seeing bits of this across the market, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about potential pitfalls. And I think what we're trying to do, and a lot of AI at the moment is quite conceptual, but when we start talking about things like consumption credit, exorbitant consumption of credits, there could be potentially some worried listeners now, and we advocate for AI. Look, it's not going anywhere, I think is probably the best way to look at it. So getting, and our message across numerous shows is from guests that we've had, is get in and just start doing it. There's not going to be a right time if you wait until you think you're absolutely ready, you're probably not ever going to do it. So you've just got to kind of bite the bullet and start doing it. How small that is, how big that is, entirely up to you. Let's think then about some practical steps, Ryan, that our listeners can take to not fall foul of all the nasty things out there that could happen, like the consumption of credits, or the sending out Betamax pricing of your very expensive products, or sending 100 emails to the one John Smith that really exists and then is 99 duplicates. What, for anyone that's feeling a little bit exposed, what practical tips do you think you can give?
I think like maybe taking, what you think is your top, 10 or 20 opportunities or 100 accounts, that type of thing, and just do a deep dive analysis on that, right? If those are truly what you think are your best, records, go look at them from top to bottom, look at the data that's on the account record. Is it complete? Does it have things like the region and what infrastructure they're using? So when you go off to market to these people, you're marketing the right stuff, what products they have. Then of course looking at not only the contacts, or they moved on, verify that information, right? Who's still there, who's not? Do you have proper email, phone numbers, that are in the right format? And then of course looking at all the other things that maybe come down the line from that, right? Do we have duplicates of these people? Do we have duplicate orders of history? And then of course other things, the things like price lists we talked about, right? What do our price lists look like? Do we need to remove some of these things, clean up all that stuff, so that if you were to start sending out a small campaign to these folks, how would it go? Would AI be able to run naturally with this and be effective, or are you going to have hallucinations galore? And then of course, if you were to spread this out, so really take a small little area and then talk to your users too, right? The end user typically knows what things are like we talked about the marketing agent earlier, right? Is they kind of have an idea of like how many bounces they get and things like that. So talk to your users, ask them, take a poll, see, where they think the best areas that, maybe the data's in the best place that you can go tackle it. You just don't want to bite off more than you can chew, because people get, it's too easy to lose focus and then you forget about it, or you just get overwhelmed. So, yeah.
Fear of starting a big job.
Yeah. Yep. I think we've all been there, right? So yeah, it's take a small bite and see where you're at. And then kind of how big the problem is too. Then you can realistically budget for it, both in staff and, CapEx specs. So, yeah.
So from my side, there's a little tactical kind of trick, I think, that certainly I consider, is that if you buy packages, you kind of restrict your exposure when it comes to using your AI, right? So it'll consume your packages of tokens. Once it hits the limit, it stops. That's probably quite a nice little tip to keep control of what you want to actually spend. Doesn't actually help you with regard to the kind of ongoing value piece. So from that perspective, the more strategic thing, I think, is I love a good workflow, right? I'm all over workflows, as most people in the business know. Someone has to own the entire workflow across a business. That has to own that, and equally, someone has to own data across the entire business, and that shouldn't just sit with AI with IT. In fact, I'd suggest it shouldn't sit with IT at all. It needs to sit with a business owner who understands those two things and their uses. Yes, they action IT to do things within it, but it has to be owned. And the more senior person you can have owning those two things within a business, the better, from my perspective. I think strategically, those are really good things to do for an SME.
Could I put a wrapper around both of your answers and call it a data governance policy?
Doesn't have workflows in it
though. But look, let's face it. I mean, that's ultimately, we've spoken about data governance. Reality is that a lot of organizations might not have a data governance policy. We would hope, in this day and age, that most would. But when we start thinking about ownership, when we start thinking about user feedback, Ryan, if you listed out all of these different things, actually that is the foundation, the bare bones of a data governance policy. So is the tip here just sort from phase one, the first thing to do is get AI to write you a data governance policy?
Brilliant. Yeah, you're speaking my language there. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you don't know where to start, type that into AI. It'll give you something, right? And you don't have to go crazy. We tell people this all the time. People ask us, well, how do you get a data governance program off the ground, right? Well, start small, right? Even if you're a large organization, you can put it in a small little area, a small department, and then grow from that, right? So basically, start with some basic rules. And most people already have something, but it's just not formalized. And there's not a data steward or a council or people who are in charge that maybe meet regularly. You need to have a regular cadence of meetings where we're doing a data governance meeting today at, once a month or whatever it may be. And you might start more often early on, right, in the process, obviously. But, kicking off something like that, where you've got people roles in terms of your overall data governance strategy, and, there's accountability there, and you've got executive buy-in, right? That way the IT guy's not the only guy voice in the room screaming, hey, guys aren't following the policy again. I can see it. It's just, and it doesn't take much to just get that going and then start adding on to it and take what you already have, improve on it, review it, and then just keep rinse and repeat, basically.
Excellent. As a final thought then, Ryan, I'm going to flip that onto its head, because I've asked for some kind of practical advice and tips on what to do. Can you maybe give me some examples of what not to do? Are there any mistakes that you come across regularly, or even semi regularly, that you can give these our listeners a steer as to what to watch out for?
Yeah, I think don't just let AI agents just start running wildly with some processes, assuming that your data is ready to go because you trust your guys. You need to go in and do an analysis, like we talked about, do some data health checks and just see kind of where the state of play is, take a small little area. The worst thing you can do is let's just go run this large campaign of, upsell strategies to our top, accounts and opportunities. And then you're going to find very quickly how embarrassed you might be, because you've got people who are like, why are you trying to upsell me something I've owned for 10 years and I'm spending $100,000 a year on, right? Do you know who I am? Right. So don't go do that, right? Take a step back, look at your data, do a little bit of auditing, and then take it stepwise, as we talked about. So,
Ali, any thoughts for you?
I'd say the biggest mistake is treating AI as a shortcut around the hard work of understanding how your business operates and actually the state of your data within your business. I think that's the biggest one. It is not a shortcut.
No,
ever.
Brilliant. Ryan, I've just got to say, you reminded me of something from earlier on in my career. You say you're going to be embarrassed upselling to someone that's had a product for 10 years. I once worked for an outsourced business development company way back when I first kicked off in my sales career, and it was telesales, right? And I had this data set, and we're way pre-AI. We're probably talking, I don't know, 2009, 2010, something like that. Yeah, right. And I called this prospect, that was in this data set, and I managed to get through, and I was like, "Hi, it's Steve calling from IBM," or on behalf of IBM, as we used to have to say. And he was like, "You're not IBM." I was like, what do you mean? He was like, "Because I'm a major account. Do you know who I am?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I panicked and I hung up. Like, literally, I hung up. The next day, it was later on that day, we had a call from IBM saying, "Please don't call our key accounts." The guy had complained to his account manager, and it kind of got back. So if I'd had it way back when, if AI was doing it, if there was a data governance policy, and believe me, there was not when I was doing that, it might have been a different story, and my blushes might have been spared. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. I think that's about all we've got time for today. So, Ali, over to you.
Yeah, Ryan, I really appreciate you joining us on the show. And thanks to everyone at home for listening. If you enjoyed it, be sure to follow or subscribe. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and of course, YouTube.
Excellent. So next time on QInsight, Steve Gibson returns to the show. We spent a lot of time talking about AI helping people do more. We covered a bit today. But what if the bigger story is helping organizations do the thing they couldn't do before? So we'll be exploring how AI is changing access to expertise, why workflow matters more than prompts, and what happens when AI starts becoming part of the operating fabric of a business. So QInsight is produced by Qgate. So to learn more about how we're helping organizations navigate CRM, AI, and emerging technology, please visit qgate.co.uk. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.